Welcome back to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. Today we're picking up a conversation again, talking about retailers are becoming retailers again inside the tech stacks of retail media networks. And I'm talking again with Jordan Witmer, who is the Managing Director of Unified Commerce at the agency Nectar First. Previously, Jordan has been in senior e-com and retail media positions at Kenvue, formerly J&J, Hershey, and Stanley Black & Decker. Good morning and welcome to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Kiri, and every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern, I bring you candid and real discussions in the world of retail media and marketplaces in just 10 minutes. So bring your own cup of coffee and we'll get smarter about retail media together. So Jordan, we left off the conversation yesterday talking about why some retailers appear to be reluctant to share, what's in their tech stack and how their retail media network functions. You brought up a good example of the drugstore retailers potentially being specifically cautious because of data privacy rules. Let's dig into this concept, like just because you're using the same technology on the back end as some of your, competitive retailers, that will be counted against you from a retail media buyer's perspective, because taking the opposite view on that as a media buyer, kind of having some standardized technology and standardized mechanisms and reporting, that seems to be a benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's how we see it from the agency side, is when we're looking at and we're staring down the barrel of everybody telling us that there's 250 of these retail media networks. It's somewhat a myth, right? Because there's so many private label retail media networks out there, but there's probably only 5 or 6 backend technologies that are powering them. So our solve for this proliferation of retail media networks is, can you get good at identifying what that tech is from how you ask questions and from what kind of reporting you're seeing? And as we're coaching and training our teams, it's, can you identify which of the 5 it is? Once you do, you know how to work with this network right away.
Which of what is 5? Is this an example number or a specific number?
I think it's meant to be representative of, right? You have Miracle, Cody, Criteo, Pentaleap, and there's a couple of other players of like largely on-site tech and will stretch into the off-site ecosystem. You have the trade desk stretched across so much of the other retailers. And once you realize what system it is you're kind of buying on the other side of the mirror, it gets a whole lot easier to manage.
Yeah, and I just completely, not self-serving, because I put this together for the benefit of people in the ecosystem, but I created an ecosystem map, because I was coming from Amazon advertising. Look, they do everything. They're the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker in the ecosystem. Like, you're just dealing with Amazon. They're passing your bid through all of the different stages without you really seeing any of it. And hey presto, your sponsored product ad shows up, or it shows up on Prime Video, or wherever you place it. But out there in the real world, things are a little bit more complicated. And so I had to understand, well, what's the difference between an SSP and an ad server? Because, Amazon's it's one and the same. So I created a base case kind of map of the ecosystem, which isn't realistic at all, because every retailer has a slight variation on that. And they might be using, let's say, Criteo. Criteo might be spanning across the whole DSP and SSP side, or it might just be one component, and then that SSP is feeding into different DSPs as well. So just understanding the ecosystem, I think, I'm not alone in the world of practitioners who've come from a self-serve Amazon paradigm, and that's good, but actually understanding for all these additional retailers that you're now spending on, you do need to understand all the different distinct parts of the value chain. And now that we have point solutions at each stage, once upon a time, it just used to be Criteo and the trade desk, and that was it. Now there are new sort of solutions that specialize in a segment of that value chain that are either there to make more money for the retailer, or they're there to make things more transparent and easier to buy on the advertiser side. So you said that there's some questions you can ask as a media buyer of the retailers to find out what's really under the hood and who it's there to serve. So what are those questions that you would be asking retailers?
Yeah, you can often tell based on probably two primary pieces. It's one, talk to me about the targeting capabilities. How does the bid move through your system? What does it start on? You can usually quickly identify, I've talked before about like a product first or a keyword first bidding system that helps you make kind of your first pathway decision of, all right, what direction are they headed? And you can start to tease away a couple through that process. And then the other, and sometimes the easiest identifier, is the reporting that comes out to the other end. It's so often terminology is specific, the order that these pieces come out in reporting, because they really are just plugged into the system, they look identical, retailer to retailer. And it can kind of be okay, got it. I know how to work with this report. We've already got our system set up to ingest it and transform it into what we need. Yeah, I would start usually in those kind of two opposite directions to help you identify what you're working with.
And what does a red flag look like to you as a media buyer?
That's a loaded question in our space, but
I feel like you're capable of answering loaded questions. I feel like that's where you thrive, Jordan.
Yeah, and we'll throw some loaded answers back sometimes, I think, too.
Okay.
Usually the red flag is, yeah, I can't really tell you that. That's when we get really, really nervous about, at the end of the day, you're an agency, you're responsible for where your client's money is going and why. And there are certainly still some partners out there, even if we talk about a really advanced product, we'll call it industry-wide, like sponsored products, that will look you in the eye and tell you, I can't tell you what keywords that's served on. It can't come out the other side. And at that point, yeah, it's an investment limiting answer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'll link back to an article that I actually quoted you in for Forbes, talking about some of the things that retailers are going to need to do to improve transparency and trust among advertisers. And your example was a retailer who, there's some low viewability placements that you wanted to yank out of the campaign. And they're like, oh, actually, you can't do that. You need to just buy a whole bundle of stuff and we're not going to tell you what's in it now. So this is the kind of stuff that was happening. You said that was in 2023. That was not that long
terribly
ago.
long ago. Yeah, we made those changes in the tail end of 2022, and when the next year's packages came out, we were told very directly that nope, that's not going to be an option anymore. You can pick the package that has less of that in it. Surprise, it's going to cost 40% higher CPMs to do it.
Oh my gosh.
And that's not a scientific number. It's just what I'm pulling off the top of my head. It was significant.
Yeah. Well, we're going to leave it there for today. We're going to pick up part 3 of this series tomorrow. So make sure that you come back to listen to the remainder of our conversation. Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Retail Media Breakfast Club. We meet here every day at 6 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe and get your daily dose of insights, trends, and hot takes in the world of retail media and marketplaces.